Hey, what's up? Mr. Bill here. I just wanted to plug my dates real quick. So if I'm coming to your city, you can come and see me play a show. So here's all my November dates. 9th, Delhi. 15th, Melbourne. 23rd, Brisbane. 30th, Sydney. For December, I have the 12th, San Francisco. 13th, Nevada City. 14th, LA. 18th, Denver. 19th, Santa Fe. 21st, Columbus. And then in January, I'm playing in Philadelphia on the 11th. If you want to find out more about any of these shows, go to mrbillstunes.com/tour. And if you don't come to my shows, I'll do a fucking piss on the carpet. Now, enjoy the podcast.
You're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you are listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're 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 listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast. Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you got listening to the Mr.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast. Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
This is an edited podcast, meaning there's a dude called Robert Fumo who basically hit me up initially and he was like, hey, I want you to do a podcast. And for a while I was like, I don't know, I don't really think I have the time or the energy to do it.
Yeah.
But he was like, I'll do all the editing. And I was like, all right, done.
Interesting. So does he manage podcasts for other people?
No, actually. Well, I think he did. So there used to be this company called Bass Gorilla.
Okay.
And they were, I guess, sort of like They did some tutorials with some neuro producers like Scope and stuff like that and people who I was a fan of. And I think I did some tutorials for them at one point.
Yeah.
And then they had a podcast for a while and I think he managed that one. And I don't think they were distributing it properly though. So there's this company called Libsyn, which stands for Liberated Syndication, which is where you want to basically put your podcast to distribute it in the same way that I guess like DistroKid is a distributor for music or whatever.
Right.
And I don't think they were doing that. I think they were just putting it on SoundCloud and YouTube and stuff like that. So with this one, we do it obviously through Libsyn. So it's on Stitcher and Apple and all that shit as well.
Cool. Yeah, I know TuneCore does them, has a podcast platform now, I think.
I should probably introduce the thing.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey.
Yeah, pretty new podcast. So you're Benn Jordan, the Flashbulb. I'm a big fan of your music.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I've been a big fan of your music since probably 2006 or something like that. I think I first listened to Red Extensions of Me.
Okay. Yeah, I remember over the years I had been, I don't know if it was your manager or your friend or something, but over the years I had heard of some guy in Australia that wanted me to come to Australia or something, or wanted me to play a show. Was there some festival or something that I was asked to? I'm trying to remember, just through my booking agent at the time, and then it never worked out, obviously. But
yeah, I was never trying to book you there. I was not a promoter.
Okay,
but it might have been a friend of mine or something like that. It would have made sense, I think. There's been a few IDME artists that have gone over there and done okay, like Vatex and
okay.
Do you know that guy?
No,
Rob Klaus.
No, I don't think so. I might. Sorry, Rob. If if we
I don't think Rob listens to this podcast, but yeah, he did pretty well over there. Woolg did pretty well over there too.
Okay.
Tipper does great over there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of artists. I think Australia is pretty accepting, honestly, of weirder styles of music.
Sure. Yeah, it's yeah, I guess just a lot of people were always name dropping you until I finally was. I'm not sure when I listen to your music, but
I hit you up directly when I was studying at SAE in Sydney. I think it might have been it might have even been 2000. Yeah, probably about 2007 or something like that.
Okay.
We had some assignment there, which was to just cover a song that you liked, but do it with all live instruments and make sure that the whole thing was mixed down on a mixing desk and basically just you have to use these tools to do a song.
Okay.
So I chose to do Undiscovered Colors.
Oh, okay.
And I think I sent it to you, and your response was a one sentence, oh, you got the night notes. I think that's all you said.
Sorry. It's interesting. Well, now I suppose you're probably in that position too, where people message you a lot, and you always have to balance that sort of I don't even read most of the things now, but when I do, I always try and taper how much I allow myself to respond, just because I realize that my job is to continue to make music, and I get so stoked and so honored when people are into things, and I could just but I want to know what they're up to. I want to know like what I was, like, so what do you do for a living? What's what's your dad like? Just things like that. But if I do that, I'll never actually, finish another track. So I always have to sort of like be like, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Yeah. So there's a style of responding to emails called CEO style responding. You know about this?
No.
It's literally that kind of shit. It's like somebody will send you like some big verbose thing about a thing or whatever, and then you'll just like say, thanks, we're looking into it, or something like that.
Yeah. Last night, I don't know if it was a friend of yours or a friend of, I don't know, somebody who introduced themselves after I had left the backstage of your show. And they like he asked me for my email, and I was just like, no, don't. Like I'll say that that I will, but I know that I'll put it off, like, and then I'll just be a shithead about it.
They were asking you for your email.
Yeah, and I was like, no, tell me now. Like, let's have this conversation now, because like I want to have the conversation, but when I get the email, then I'll put it off, and I'll just keep putting it off, and I'll end up in the thousands that like I never.
Interesting. That's good that you were like willing to have the conversation then, though. Like usually what I'll do is if I don't want to have a conversation, I'll be like, yeah, just email me.
Yeah.
Because it's real easy to like passively not answer it then.
Yeah.
But then also it sits in your inbox and you feel guilty and
yeah. I realize, yeah, it's almost like I think I was like, no, I'm too much of a piece of shit to like respond to the email. Like I need to
Nice.
I need to actually engage in this now, but that is the case. Like it's always a thing where I have correspondence I really want to respond to, but I don't know. I'm like waiting for a magical day when I'm sick or something, when I'll get the flu and I'll just respond to it all or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't write music when you're sick?
I probably do. Yeah, I suppose I do write music when I'm sick.
It fucks your ears. Like when you get sick, because of your U-station tubes attached to your throat or whatever, I guess like it fucks your hearing up a little bit too. I've tried to do a few mix downs when I'm sick before, and it's kind of tricky to get anything sounding proper.
Yeah, if you have a cold, and then there's like a week after a cold where I like can't really mix anything down, or don't really want to do anything.
Yeah,
but I don't know. But that's like a big issue I run into is I'll make tracks and I don't mix them down.
Okay.
Have you been doing this at all? Is this?
Yeah, I do this, and for me, what I have noticed though is like the mix down is kind of everything. Like you can have somewhat of a just average track, but if it has like an insane mix down, it can kind of make it like a 10 out of 10 track almost.
Sure, yeah.
Like it gives it like some extra crazy value. Same with the sound design. It's like there's whole genres based around this shit, I feel like, where it's just like there's a formula there, like psytrance or drum and bass or halftime or something like that, or dubstep. And they're just like, the entire art form is like sound design and really tight sequencing and really, really good mixdowns.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's like if you don't do those three things and then you just try and rely on the songwriting in those genres, then you'll just like fail at it. But I think for your style, it kind of the attribute is not necessarily the mixdown usually anyway.
Like I think of mastering when I'm writing a track, a lot of times I think of mastering as I'm doing it as sort of like this part's going to need to be quiet and this part's going to need to be loud, and there's going to have to be this discernible difference between those two things. Probably a bit more than the average artist does, where they just, and I say that as somebody who masters other people's music from time to time. I feel like the average artist just kind of wants that boost and wants things to be kind of sounding like everything else on Spotify or something. And I think at some point I started looking at volume as a tool, rather as an emotional tool that I should be utilizing, rather than worrying about having that, whatever it is, that accolade of being the loudest, most
you almost
perfectly.
Use like the mix down as like a writing tool more so than like a function.
Yeah, and so that's why. A lot of times I'll have stuff, but the weird thing is a lot of times I'll have stuff like completely ready to mix down, mixed, everything. All I got to do is press that export button and I just move on and I never go back. And it's so bizarre because I'm at this point I'm losing like 4 out of 5 tracks just to that weird phenomenon where I'm just like,
Can't be bothered mixing it.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's just like I'm just done with it. Like I just want to like bury it in the ground. I'm sick of it. I don't hear it. I don't want anybody else to hear it.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, maybe the solution to that is just to sit on it for like a year or two and then bring it back out and mix it when you feel like it.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh shit, I feel like I need to put an album out or something. You can just quickly dig through all those finished things and then it's just like, a few weeks of mix downs.
Like the last full-length album, Piety of Ashes, I think I probably have like 35 to 40 tracks at least that ended up eventually, it was just like, okay, I guess it's time now to like select some of these, and then the rest of them just, didn't go anywhere. And I don't know why I do that. Because I don't really think that any are better than the others to the average person's ear. And like releasing music really is about just like making a living, kind of, right? You write it because you love writing it, and you release it because...
I almost feel like releasing music, it's the other side to writing it. And if I don't do it, I feel like I get like emotionally blocked or something like that. I'm like, fuck, this stuff has to like be not on my hard drive and just somewhere else where I feel comfortable now deleting it from my life. And, now other people have it. And now and then it's kind of like a wave washes over me and I'm like, oh, fuck, all right, that's done. And now I can like actually feel clear-headed enough to start new projects or something. Yeah,
it's a good way to look at it. I kind of look at it like that, and a mixture of like writing music is just sort of like sitting in a bathtub full of like chocolate pudding, and you're just enjoying this warm chocolate pudding, and then when you release it, you have to like clean the bathroom, because that's when I have to I have to go through like the shortening the tracks to, or I guess sort of making everything sound good together. I have to deal with promotion, I have to deal with shows, I have to deal with interviews, I have to deal with artwork, CD companies, everything. And that's when all of a sudden my schedule gets busy with things that aren't writing music. And so
that makes sense. So it's almost like yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of people have that about actually writing music. It's like the last track they finished was so involved in terms of like the editing maybe, or the everything really that they had to do to get that done, that starting a new track seems to be really daunting. They're like, oh fuck, I don't want to have to like go through that whole thing again. But you kind of seem like you have that not for writing music but for releasing music. Releasing music.
And if I write a track that I'm really happy with, I'm usually like the same day I'm starting a new one. Like it's I get that. I listen to it back. I'll listen to the master. I'll listen to the mix of it, and I'll get the chills, and then I'll be like, oh, I want to write some more. I want to keep going. Like I have that.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Little dopamine rush from.
So you're pretty prolific then. Like how many tracks? Like how long do you reckon it takes you on average to write a track? If you took like every track you've ever written, like do you think it takes you about a day? Or
back in the day, like back in like Red Extensions of Me era, I could probably do 2 a day.
Interesting.
And I would just go crazy. Now I'm spreading stuff out because I'm not sure. I think I'm just trying to always sound better than the last thing.
Yeah.
But that never makes sense because it's music and it's subjective, right? So I get hung up on things like I'll make a track and then I'll be like, okay, so this melody isn't complicated enough. This melody, it's using too many black keys. It needs to use more white keys in there. Just stupid things. I'll invent little things to put in there. Or even certain things where it's like, this just isn't clever enough. Like this part of the song has to sound the same backwards as it does forwards melodically, or something dumb like that, which is stuff I've done in tracks too, where it's just like, I don't know why.
I mean, it's just interesting little puzzles to make it more challenging for yourself. I was having this conversation with my girlfriend the other day. I was like, it'd be really cool if I made like I said to her, I was like, it'd be really cool if I just made like, 2 tracks on an album or something where when you layer them over each other, like they put each other out of phase and you get like a third ambient track or something like that.
Yeah.
She was like, it'd be interesting if you made a 3-track EP where you could layer any combination of them to create a new track. So therefore you'd have the 3 that you released plus another 4, I guess, so you'd have 7 total.
Yeah.
So you could layer all 3 together, or you could layer tracks 1 and 2, or tracks 1 and 3, or tracks 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then like create some weird phase correlation, or maybe just some like rhythmic complementariness or something. I feel like that's some shit Boards of Canada might do.
Well, it's funny because forever I've been sort of planning on writing another all piano album, and I wanted to write it to where the entire thing would be a palindrome, where like the first song and the last song, but everything would just be phrased differently and faster and slower. But if you took all the notes, like if you just took sheet music from like the first song all the way to the end of the last song and then just inverted it, it would be exactly the same.
Sheet music wise.
Yeah. And so like there's a couple tracks I've done that. There's even like a piano track where I've done that. But like doing a whole album, like it was one of those things where I was just like, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to work on this so hard. And I just realized I'm not clever enough to do it.
And how important for you do you reckon it is for somebody to figure that out?
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Like listening to it, like if you loved the album, like let's take an album that like, for me, it would be like if I discovered that was the case with like the Downward Spiral or something, like my head would just pop. I'd just feel like, the best moment of my life, right?
So I think about like, for instance, with that phase idea that I had, the only reason I don't do it pretty much is because I just don't think anyone would ever figure it out.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like nobody's going to figure that out. It's
Unless you like made it real obvious or something. And then what's the point?
If you ended up like killing a bunch of people and then there's like a Netflix series on your life, then like some like guy in a university would be like, the freak made these tracks, or he'd phase them. Yeah, he'd figure it out.
Refer to you as the freak.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, anytime I've done stuff like that, it's very, very rare that anybody's figured out the little puzzles. My best friend, Andrew Harris, he releases music as Bartel, and he like literally he'll listen to a track of mine and he'll be like, "Is this a puzzle track?" I'll just be like, "Yeah, no,"
Interesting. And so what other puzzles have you done other than sheet music palindromes?
A lot of times they're emotional things. Like certain things will be linked. Like one thing will be a certain song backwards. There's a track I just did recently it's the same melody, I believe 4 different times, but they're all timed different. They're all running on different clocks. But I made them all like, come together at the right time. So it sounds like it's just one big odd fugue type thing, but it's all the exact same melody, but one's on like a 30-second note and then the other one's like a new note happens every 4 bars or something, and it comes from obviously like with the clocks it was from the modular, like that's ideas like that are a bit easier to follow.
Your modular looks crazy. How long have you been into it for?
I started my voyage into modular with I did a score for Adler Planetarium's Planet 9 film. And I decided that that they're always really open to my ideas. Like if I want to have like a idea that's different than just writing music for the stars, just something that's a little more involved. And for that one, I wanted to write everything with logic gates and sort of do everything with Boolean algebra. And as always, they're amazing. So they're just like, cool, have fun, good luck. Let us know how it goes. And so I knew that like modular would be where I had to start with that. And so I pretty much took my budget for that score, and instead of spending it on like string players and things like that, I just started my modular. Yeah, started my modular, and I kind of thought that I would sell a lot of it afterwards. So I didn't really think I would get into it. Yeah, it just kept growing. Yeah,
it usually happens. Yeah,
I have like a bunch over there too. I mean, not everything that I have is in this rack right now. It's just the only stuff that I currently use.
Yeah, that was sort of the same as me. I got the Mother 32 and I was like, that's probably good. And then I got an O-Coast and I was like, I'll probably just stop there. Like that's enough little patching for me. And then just got a Pittsburgh modular 420 case and filled it.
Yeah, the good news for anybody who's listening to this, going through this money hole, is that it ends. There is an end to it. Like there's an end where I like want to take stuff out and sell it and like.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm at that point as well.
It turns into like if a new module comes out that's really different than anything else or really useful, then I'll be like, oh, I want that. But otherwise, I'm not really trolling modular grid anymore. I'm just kind of happy with what I have.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So you said you write like a ton of stuff that doesn't make it to albums. How often, because you do like stuff for commercials and all that, like how often will somebody hit you up and you'll just dig through like piles of stuff that didn't make it to albums and just give them that and be like, does this work?
Yeah, I used to do that quite frequently, but now I have this massive library of stuff that I've written for commercials and television that wasn't used, and they're called like in the industry they call them corpses because they're just these, which is like kind of this dark thing to say, but and so it's even better because they're 30 second or 60-second clips of music that I have this massive library of them. So almost any time I have clients they're producers who come to me for my music, and a lot of times they just don't have the budget to pay me a demo fee or something. So they'll just be like, hey, send me some corpses. I'll be like, all right. Hope the FBI doesn't see this email chain.
A demo fee is like where if you make the thing for a company or whatever, but they don't pick your thing, you still get money for it, right?
Yeah, and that's really hard to come. That's like most people who are getting demo fees these days are grandfathered in from, because the ad industry, obviously, the television ad industry has taken a massive hit, of course, in the last 10, 15 years.
Is that just because of stuff like Netflix and whatnot?
Yeah, I realized I started my slow I was really I was really neck deep in that industry, and I was like making most of my living from it, and I was planning most of my future around it. And I remember one day I was at my mom's house, and she had a DVR, and she just fast forwarded through ads, and I was like, if my mom is fast forwarding through ads, then like
then you're fucked.
yeah, it was kind of so that was sort of when I started to like try and get more involved with game stuff, or just take like my career, Flashbulb career, is not take it for granted and take it a little more seriously, and
Right.
And luckily that's worked out. So
Nice. So at this point, like your main things in terms of like making money and just like career stuff in general is the Flashbulb stuff and game stuff.
royalties is my number one, which is so beautiful.
By royalties, you mean like Spotify checks and stuff like that?
Yep, Spotify, occasionally ASCAP and stuff like that. But
well, I mean, I guess like if you've done films in the past, the PRO royalties can actually be pretty good. Like I did that Nicolas Cage movie, and my last few checks through APRA, which is the Australian PRO, have been actually pretty nuts.
They're I know the Canadian ones pay out a lot better. The US ones, I've never had a massive I don't think I've ever had a check where I've been like, awesome, I'm gonna it's always been like me laughing, and every now, like before I open it, I always be like, oh, let's see how much this one's for, and I'll open it, and sometimes I'll be like, okay, like $300 here, that's not that bad, or something like that. But ASCAP, I'm not. I almost don't want to say this on a podcast just because I don't think ASCAP is a nonprofit company. I think it's a for-profit company, and they don't have any sort of. They don't tell you what percentage of what you're getting ever like that. They don't give that information to anybody.
Yeah, they just sort of give you money and be like, here's your money.
Yeah, right. They just say, it's like, I've always referred to him as like a grandpa who just sort of like, is like, all right, kid, here you go. Here's $20 for the week. But where their real fuckheads comes in with like what they do to small businesses, like restaurants and stuff like that. I had an ex-girlfriend who managed a restaurant, and one day, and she just basically was listening to, Spotify. I think it was right around when Spotify first came out. And they were like listening to Spotify in the restaurant. And there were secret agents who came in and wrote down all the music that was being played. And then they like said, okay, well, you have to get a ASCAP. I think it was ASCAP who did this. It was either ASCAP or BMI, but as the story goes on, they both did it. But
have to buy like an umbrella license thing or whatever to be
for
able
like
to play.
$25K for the year. Yeah,
I mean, it's good that there's people going around doing that though.
Right. Well, so this happens, and she came home and she's freaking out. And she's like, "Is there any way around this?" Blah blah. And I was like, "No. If they catch you, you have to pay it. Otherwise, they're going to sue your restaurant." And but the weird thing is, she was like, "Well, I asked them what to do in the future after we paid it, and they said, oh, you could keep playing Spotify." And I was like, "Wait a minute." They don't know what you're playing at all. Like they have no metric for this whatsoever. Not only that, it's against Spotify's terms of service to be played in a public establishment, and they know that. They very well know that, and so like they didn't recommend her like Pandora for Business or satellite radio or something like that. They just said, no, just keep using what you did.
Fine, yeah.
And it doesn't. And so they got paid for money that wasn't represented by ASCAP. And sure enough, a month later, BMI came through, and the exact same situation happened there, where they were like, oh, we heard a couple of our tracks being played. And, the restaurant owner was like, no, we just gave ASCAP $25K. And they're like, yeah, well, now you got to pay us. And so I realize now that the larger chunk of money in both of these unions is just legal fees. It's just a lawyer orgy. Like it's like no artist is really getting anything from this.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, my checks from APRA have always been terrible up until the Nicolas Cage movie, basically, and then I started getting a few in the last few months that were like well over a few grand. Yeah, and I was like, "Fuck, I didn't know that was possible." Because I know that like generally you get paid like a couple of cents per play, right? So it's like to make any serious money, you need to be getting like hundreds of thousands of plays.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know how it works. Actually, I don't think APRA gives you like the percentage breakdowns either.
What is the other one? There's Sound Exchange. That's another one that like they work with, I believe, satellite radio and Pandora. And last year, I think I was just like, man, like my Pandora career is just taken off because I'm making quite a good, I'm getting big checks from them. And I was pretty happy, and part of it like helped me build this studio and stuff. I was really like, wow, all right, my income's going up. And I just got an email one day from them saying that they've been paying me the wrong artist's money,
Oh wow.
and that I owed them something like the tune of like $27,000.
Holy shit.
And the artist's I think his name is Grandma or Grandpa or something. I almost want to look it up now because I talked to him on Twitter and I was like, hey, I've been getting your money for the last year, and he like never responded. He
Holy
never
fuck.
actually
Did he have
acknowledged
like
it.
many Twitter followers?
Yeah, I'm trying to look up his tracks are. I don't want to say anything bad about his tracks, but Grandma artist. I'm like looking up on my phone right now. Grandma Moses is the artist. Grandpa, I don't know, but anyway.
So they made the mistake of paying you. Did you guys both have like a similar legal name or something?
Yeah, we both of our last name is Jordan. So, although I don't think
his first name start with B.
I don't think his does. No, I think we just both had the same last name as Jordan. But because I did ask, like, how the fuck does this happen? Like, how do you, And I didn't pay them, but they're essentially withholding my checks. And I thought about, because I mean, that's kind of like if you make an error that big.
Yeah,
like,
you can't be expected to then be like, hey, all that money that you thought you got from work that you did and spent on a studio, yeah, you got to pay it back.
Yeah, right. And so they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna. Basically, you're not going to get a check from us for about a year. And I thought about being like, oh, well, I'm going to pull out of your union then. But I don't know. Might as well be fair and let Grandma get her money or his money or whatever.
Yeah.
Grandpa, whatever the guy's name is.
That's crazy that can even happen and have repercussions for you if they make the mistake. I mean, surely they have like business insurance or some shit. Like they should be able to cover stuff like that.
And the reason I tried hitting him up is because I wanted to make sure that he was getting a massive bump in his checks. Like I wanted to make sure that they weren't just like, oh, well, he hasn't noticed. So
yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, put this in the old. Yeah.
That makes sense. So I wanted to talk about that other thing that we're talking about upstairs that we didn't fully get into, which is you said you were doing shows, or you had done shows in the past where they were basically kickstarted in that, like, so how does that work? Like you would go into a market like LA or something and be like, hey, post on your social media and be like, hey, I want to play in LA. And if you want me to play, preliminarily buy a ticket. And if we hit 300 tickets, I'll come and play the Echo or something like that. Yeah. That kind of how it works.
Pretty much. Yeah. And there were a couple things that like needed to be tweaked a little bit because I did a show this way in Austin, Texas last year. It was maybe a little over a year ago, but it actually worked out, and it worked out great in a place where I couldn't really find a promoter to pay me a decent advance.
Do you remember the venue?
The venue was booked after. Like basically, we talked to the venue. My booking agent talked to the venue. Yeah. I think it was like the Sidewinder or something. And
so what? When you kickstart it, you say like, "Hey, I'm gonna play a show in Austin. If we hit X amount of tickets," do you tell people what date or what venue at that stage? Or?
Usually, what date? But the plan is what date, and then the venue sometimes would come later because that way you could go to a venue and you could be like, "Hey, we have 400 tickets sold. And do you want to sell alcohol to these people?" You have so much more leverage when you do that. But now I'm starting to learn that it actually might be better to, once this gets off the ground a bit more, to have venues in cities that are just sort of partners with Showseed and just sort of...
because Showseed is a thing that you developed?
Yeah. Showseed, yeah. It was, I started the idea back when I was in Chicago, and I announced it, and I got sued within 24 hours by some guy in Vancouver who like... had the same. He said that he was patent pending on. He had a patent pending on crowdfunding performances.
I've seen one service that did this before, and I put it to my agent. I was like, "Hey, why don't we do a tour this way?" And they thought it was a silly idea. They were like, "Oh, it's not going to work because it's just like too tough to work with venues and dates and all that shit." And then on top of that, it wasn't called Showseed, it was called something else. But yeah, I didn't know that you had a company also that did this. Yeah,
well, it's I mean, if you go to like showseed.com, it's literally like just a holding thing that's like hopefully coming soon. I have like a beta of the website. It's just not like public, but I have like a beta with like the whole transaction and everything working. And I used it for that one show. But I think like some of the perks of this are like, first of all, it gives you a lot more bargaining power with a venue because you already have this many people coming to your show.
Right, it's like a low risk thing.
Yeah.
To hit up a venue and be like, "Hey, want to take this sold out show?"
Because running a venue is really risky. Like when you think about it, or
it's
being
like
a promoter.
if you open it and nobody comes to the show, it's like it really costs you.
You're paying a sound guy, security. You have bartenders who don't have customer or don't have people, and they're pissed off. And so
I guess unless the venue is like working with the promoter, and the promoter sort of eats that cost by paying like a venue hire fee or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's like usually a line item called the nut, which is just like, I think that just means like the nut to the door. Like, is that what it means? The house nut or whatever?
Yeah, I think it just means like the ground expenses, right?
Yeah. So like, bar people and lighting, electricity and shit.
Sure. Yeah. Just like how much it costs on average to run a night at the venue.
It's funny they call it the nut.
Yeah. It made me, I always wondered that. And for some reason, I always imagined, because I've heard that before, and I've just imagined like the meat inside of a nut or something, like a cashew shell, but like the actual cashew you would eat like that. I don't know why I even think of it that way, but there's a lot of weird terms that they use. But and so for an artist, I think obviously like promoters and venues don't give a shit where you are the night before or after.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like now you have control over that, and you can go, okay, I'm in Seattle this day, Portland the next day, San Francisco 2 days after that, 2 days after that I'll be in LA, then Phoenix, and all of a sudden the artist is saving a lot of money. But I think like the integration into social media is probably one of the most powerful things, because you could say like if you were to buy a ticket to an artist, you want an artist to come see you, and you're buying a ticket with like the motivation. So like a good example is in Austin, people bought some tickets for their friends just because they really wanted me to come out, which is not something that I like want people to do. But one thing that they really did do is share it with everybody. And they said, we got to get up to, this many pre-sales to make this happen. And so they would share it, and you would naturally have that sort of, I guess, low-level viral sharing.
Well, I guess, what happens then is instead of just playing a show to like your 20 or 30 super fans in that market, your 20 or 30 super fans become 20 or 30 miniature promoters in that market.
Right, yeah, and they feel excited about that. And when you finally get to the show, they feel like they brought you there, which like in an abstract way they always have been, but now it's more direct.
Totally.
And then they bring their friends and girlfriends as well, and then you have more sales at the door, which is what happened in Austin. Like it doubled the sales once the actual show came, because a lot of people bought a ticket and then they brought more people with. And
well, that's the thing. Yeah, if I find shows kind of hit like a critical mass, they'll be like, if you only sell like 50 tickets to a show or something, and that's like kind of not enough for the snowball effect to happen. But like, if you sell out a show like 80% of the way, it's almost guaranteed that it'll sell out 100% of the way on the night, just because it becomes like the cool thing to do in town.
Right. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. I'm usually not subject to that. I'm never the cool thing to do, I don't think.
I think it's not a lot of artists are. I think
you're a cool thing to do, I think. I think
depends on the show and the time and the place and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think in Denver I can be. I still play a lot of real small shows.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not I really it's kind of like I sometimes get upset about it, but not upset, but I sometimes get bummed out about it, but I also see it as like a weird blessing in disguise of like never really being cool. But
I think just experimental electronic music is always a hard sell, and there's really only one person or two people in the world who can do it and like play really huge shit, and that's pretty much Aphex.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, Tom York or something like that.
Yeah, and Aphex is usually a DJ set anyway, where he's playing a bunch of dancey stuff.
Which is fine, but he does, mainly I think at this point, it's people pay him a lot and put him on these big lineups and stuff because it's such a rarity, and it's kind of like a legacy act at this point and all that stuff.
Yeah, and most of the people that you see at those shows have like, they've never really listened to his music. They just know he's crazy.
Exactly, and it just kind of becomes like the cool thing to do, or like the cool thing to go to, so you can tell your friends you went to an Aphex show or something. Yeah. Not to take away from what he does. He's obviously insanely
totally
good.
Yeah. And I think, but that is it. And it's kind of, well, it's like, I guess, how many festivals have you played in your life where, this is just something I've experienced where I've thought to myself, had I put up a jukebox on stage that people could text a song that they wanted to hear, like it would have been so much more successful than my show that I'm being paid thousands of dollars to play, and I'm putting everything into. I'm playing my instruments, I'm doing everything right, but it's just people are at a festival, and they're just not interested in engaging in music that much at that particular festival.
It's kind of like the show last night. It's like, we just DJ'd and just played, me and Dylan were just playing heavy tune after heavy tune, because it's like, at that time, it's like people are drunk and trying to party. They're not really trying to concentrate on like very intricate music.
Are you actually gonna be able to like reach anybody and like change their perspective of music at that gig?
Yeah, exactly. They're probably not in the right mindset for that at that time. And it's also probably not what they're expecting of us when we're doing the back-to-back thing anyway. But that's kind of why I started the label, because I was like, all right, and I understand now that shows are like this.
Yeah.
And this is what I do in shows now, I guess. And then I started the label because that's kind of where I came from initially with electronic music. Was the way I got into electronic music actually was I went to like a psytrance party in Australia, which we call a doof. And I took a bunch of acid and started listening to like shitloads of that old school like high-tech Goa trance stuff.
Yeah.
And then from there I got into like Square Pusher and your stuff and Venetian snares and all that. So like I really very early on, like getting into electronic music, was into that stuff. And so it makes me feel nostalgic, and I really like it, because before that I was into like technical metal stuff, like Vale of Maya and Dillinger and stuff like that.
Sure.
So for me, it's kind of like, I don't know, the more technical, eloquent style of electronic music is stuff that I think people can eventually get into. But I think if you look through the music industry, like as a whole, this is something Saya told me the other day. He's like, I think we're just in like that sort of disco hair metal phase of electronic music right now, with all the bro step and dubstep and stuff. And he's like, eventually it'll come through the other side, and all of the more technical stuff, like what happened with metal as well, will sort of like surface more and there'll be enough people to kind of like fill in those markets as well,
Yeah, I do wonder. And it's strange because I never really saw myself as like, at some point in my life, I just got told that I was like a breakcore artist or something.
Well,
or then
there was like 2 albums that were breakcore.
It was like, well, sure, it was like IDM or breakcore or whatever it was, and I never thought of it that way. Like I've never been. I guess if anybody who's listening to my music could probably guess that I don't really pay attention to genres. I'm just kind of all over the place, and I've always looked at it as like there's 2 genres. There's like fun music and then emotional, serious music.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And it's like really successful people can hit both of those chords, and I'm not one of those. Like I don't make very much fun music,
right.
Which I've just never been. I've never had a knack for it. I've like done Acid Wolf albums and stuff, and I've tried. But it's just not been as, not nearly as impactful or perfect sounding for that type of thing as something like Deadmau5 or anything else.
Well, he makes a lot of really emotional stuff too.
Now he does, yeah, right. More recently, I haven't.
Like the Netflix Polar stuff that he did, that was sick and pretty emotional. And then he also did the symphony stuff, where he did like all of his tracks with like a however many piece orchestra at the Wilton in LA.
Okay, yeah.
He did like 2 nights there.
Yeah, he's a talented dude for sure.
Yeah.
I'm always angry when people like take a piss on him or like, for no reason. I'm like, just like, why? But like people, a lot of times people like mention Deadmau5 and then just sort of look at me like waiting for me to say something mean, and it's like, oh, he's a dude who like started in his bedroom and makes great
here's the thing. Here's the thing about Deadmau5 is like, if you're into like banging electro music, you'll like it. If you're into weird emotional shit, you'll like it. If you're into IDM, you'll probably like it. If you're like, he really does hit a lot of things for a lot of people, and I think it's
he's a perfectionist, and you can hear that like in everything he does, and again, like just with how I make music, like when I listen to music, like just because it's dance music or just because something is like just because something's that genre, I'm not immediately like, no way, I hate that music, I only like this music, and I don't really play that game. I've never been into that.
Well, it's kind of doing a disservice, I think, to yourself as an artist to be like that.
Of course.
Because then when you go to write music, you just like, when you're writing music, you really don't want any boundaries. Like I think like the most creative thing you can do is to realize that anything is susceptible to be anything.
Yeah.
And in the music writing process, realizing that everything can be 100% malleable and changeable as you're going.
Yeah, I think that's in genre, that's like a realization that I sort of started with, but one that I'm starting to get a lot more now is with melody and stuff. Like there is no wrong, like there literally is no red light anywhere in music. Like
there is stuff though that I think like collectively we see to be less pleasant sounding though.
What I've been doing, like, for the last couple of years is I've been finding something that's wrong. Like, I'll write a track or something and I'll be like, maybe I should change that. Or I'll even just be playing the piano and I'll play the wrong chord. And then I'll stop and say, okay, wait. All right, so let's try this again and let's try and make it right this time. And it's always possible. You can always do it. And especially, it just depends how you're listening to it. I almost wish like I could just like plug a MIDI keyboard in there and like to demonstrate, but I suppose that's what my channel's for or something. But okay, a great example is for anybody listening who's musically inclined to play a C major seventh with their left hand on a piano, and then play a C pentatonic with their right hand. And like, okay, so that makes a lot of sense. You just have this like, this
Like a blues scale.
This nice C. It's just this pretty general C with like the C major seventh will have a B at the end as a tail, sort of, put a little suit on the chord, little bow tie. But so now with your right hand, play a D pentatonic, and then still play that C major seventh with your left hand, but play it all at once. And you notice that F sharp is going to sound rotten in there all of a sudden. You're going to have this F sharp in the middle of a C major seventh. But if you just play it and play around with it enough to where your ear gets used to it, now all of a sudden playing both the C major on both hands sounds wrong. And now that sounds right. And it's just because, and it's not even that, like, it's something that, like, it's not something where, you have to be like a jazz major to appreciate. Like, I think anybody, if it's just played with the right finesse, and if the chord that leads into it or leads out of it, I guess my point is that there's like no wrong key to any chord. Is
the example you just gave though, would you say that's more likely happening due to contrast or due to exposure therapy? Because I mean, like, if you're playing it wrong enough, you're exposing yourself to it enough that eventually it sounds right, and then doing the other thing sounds wrong, or does the other thing sound wrong in contrast to the thing that now sounds right? Or
I think that for most people, if I led up to it, if I were improvising, if I were just playing something on the piano, and I led up to it expecting to play an F sharp over a C major or a C major seventh, it would not sound wrong to anybody. And if I expected to play just a straight up C major with both hands, it would not sound wrong to anybody. But I think if you play the two next to each other, only one can like sound right at the time.
Yeah.
But then if you even make a challenge of like, okay, now I'm going to make a song that goes from like that C major pentatonic scale on the right hand, and now we're going to go to a D, and we're going to bring that F sharp back in. We're just going to go one to the next. I bet if you wrote it with the right timing and finesse, you can make it sound right. And that's sort of what I'm running into. And that this is actually a problem with writing music for me. And I think this exists. I feel like as people get older, like older people I know that are 50, 60 years old, they sort of run these issues where like the fence that used to be around me, I used to have this like little yard that I lived in melodically, and it just kept growing and growing, and now like I can't see the end of it anymore.
Right.
And it makes it really hard for me to write.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure how it affects other people's ears, but
I mean, I never listen to your music and think it sounds wrong. I always listen to your music and think it sounds melodically interesting.
okay.
But I never hear it and be like, well, that's like way too dissonant or something. And I do have that with some music, like especially noise music, like Merzbow or something.
Right.
If I listen to that, I'll be like, oh, this is melodically fucked.
Like, well, so what do you think about like Giant Steps?
I'm actually not really familiar.
Okay, like Coltrane's Giant Steps.
I've listened to it once or twice just because people have asked me to,
Right,
but
yeah.
I honestly don't remember it.
Because that's like melodically wrong everywhere. Like everything about that track's wrong from a musical perspective, but
Can you hum the melody of it?
Do 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 do. I'm so off key. Do do do. You know, does that ring a?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I mean, if it's, most jazz I listen to, who's it by? Coltrane?
Coltrane. Yeah.
Most Coltrane I've listened to doesn't sound melodically wrong to me.
So everything is that and Moment's Notice are two of his tracks that are just bananas when you like look at how they're written. Like everything, so everything's like hopping around with, I believe in Giant Steps it's fourths. Everything's hopping around with chordal voicings, and then the improvised solo over it, the counterpoint. Every time every single so it's moving like this fast, like da 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 da. Every single time you go through one of those dot dot, the scale changes with the improvise. And so to a human brain, this is just nonsense. This just sounds like, to anybody just listening to it in their car, it should sound like nonsense. And when the reason it's Giant Steps is such a legendary track is that if you study it and if you play it slow on the piano and you're like, okay, I'm going to stay in key on each one of these scales as I'm hitting it, it sounds like nonsense. And it's not until it's only like, I can't play Giant Steps and have it sound good. I could try, but it'll always sound like nonsense. But real, like the highest level of jazz musicians, it's like their heart and their brain finally match up, and they can just feel it and play it, like just kind of how Coltrane did, to where it sounds absolutely perfect and absolutely right, and there's nothing wrong with it, even though all of the notes are just utter chaos. And so that's sort of the last track that you'll learn in your life to play correctly.
It's like the big boss.
Yeah, there's like the boss track.
Yeah, I actually don't know music theory really at all. I know like a tiny bit of melodic music theory. Like I know what a fifth is, and I know what like an octave is and stuff like that. And I know like I understand all like the rhythm stuff and time signatures and subdivisions and all that stuff. Yeah. But as far as like jazz theory, I have no idea. It's kind of interesting. My mom always, for some reason, my mother does this thing. I don't know if she's just fucking with me at this point, but she'll introduce me to people or introduce me to people who have listened to my music that she's shown my music to previously, and then say, and can you believe that he doesn't know how to read music? You don't know how to read music? No, I know how to read music. And I'm just always, and then I always correct her, and I'm like, I know how to read music, but it's like irrelevant because I'm not writing things like Beethoven on a desk, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, I think in some ways, what I always tell people who are like, I get asked a lot if I know music theory because a lot of my stuff just has a lot of notes in it. Yeah. And people are like, oh, cool, where'd you learn music theory? I'm like, I've never learned music theory. Yeah. As if you have like a piece of wax and like a old pen and you're like dipping so they're like, well, how do you make all that stuff? And my answer to them is like, well, I think like if you just listen to enough music, you just get cluey enough as to what you like the sound of, and you can figure it out. And then I think music theory is like better as like a justification tool, like after the fact sort of thing. It's I mean, what it really is it's a language to communicate with other musicians. Right. Like, so if you're in a vacuum writing music by yourself in a studio. Yeah, right. When I've used music theory, it's been when I have a violinist coming and I need them to play something and I don't feel like going through them, making them memorize it or something. It's generally, and so just handing them piece of sheet music. That makes sense. Having them do, I usually use a melodica with violin, so that way I could like play it give it some like, melodic, like the keyboard harmonica type thing. I looked up a video once of the melodica, and the top comment was like, "Hey bro, why are you smoking that piano?" But those are like great to train. If you have like a saxophonist or a violinist or something, those are like great to like show them where you want your. That's like the only justification I've ever had for owning one of those instruments. But yeah, and you came from the jazz scene in Chicago, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So you kind of need to know music theory, I guess, if you're playing with jazz people. Sort of. To some degree. A little bit, yeah. I mean, you definitely do have to be able to read charts. Yeah. But jazz is more charts than sheet music because you're just improvising over charts. So they'll just, in Chicago, like, especially, 10 plus years ago, you'd get booked at a jazz club and you wouldn't know, like, I'd be the guitarist and I wouldn't know the drummer or the sax player. Right. Or, whatever instrument I was playing at the time. And then you just have your fake book or your real book, which just has like charts for a bunch of jazz standards. And then you just be like, okay, we're going to go from there. So here we go, Autumn Leaves. And then, you start there, and then 10 minutes later you end up somewhere else completely. And it's a phenomenal experience. Like I miss it so much living here because we just don't have that here in Atlanta, and in Chicago it's not that common anymore either, to just have like random jazz freestyle. Where is the sort of last frontier for jazz now? Probably New Orleans, right? Probably Tokyo, honestly. Tokyo. Yeah, really? Probably Japan seems to have a pretty thick jazz scene. I'm sure New York has. Vegas. To this day, whenever I'm in Vegas, I'll go to the Bellagio and just listen to a trio. Like they always seem to book jazz just to like,
follow that vibe or something, but nobody actually gives a shit. It's just
Right.
you know, 3 drunk people just being like, cool. Yeah, the Japan seems to be pretty into jazz still. New Orleans, it's a little touristy. It's just sort of like a parade with like jazz musicians marching along or
Yeah,
something.
it's just like Bourbon Street in Fredericton or whatever.
Right, yeah,
So
it's not-
I've been there once, and I walked down Bourbon and down, I think it's Fredericton or Frankenstein or some shit, whatever the fucking other street is that starts with an F.
Yeah.
And we went into like a ton of clubs. I was with a few friends, and I think I saw like 3 or 4 different jazz bands on a Monday night just walking down
Really?
those 2 streets.
What I think, yeah, from my experiences, it's always been kind of older, like old school, like sort of like a small jazz ensemble, like trying to play like Prohibition era music rather than
Yeah, makes sense.
you know, some crazy like freestyle jazz thing going on. But to be fair, before Katrina, I had been to New Orleans twice before Katrina, and it was like a completely different city. And I almost feel like that's like a hipster thing to say, like, oh, you totally should have saw it before the hurricane destroyed it. But
When did that happen?
2005, 2004. I
Okay,
think.
I went in 2016, so
Okay,
long
yeah.
after.
Right, yeah. It definitely made. I mean, there used to be like little voodoo shops and like actual greasy jazz clubs that didn't seem like they had like a license to even exist, and now
Yeah.
it just kind of got like glossed over with like.
Have you been into
touristy.
that club that has no electricity there? It's like a little bar that's apparently like one of the first bars that existed there, and they just haven't hooked it up to electricity because they were just like,
Yeah, well,
let's try and
why
make
do it now? Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything's like gaslit there too. They have like gaslight piping
Yeah.
throughout the city and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't been there, but it sounds like a fun place as long as it's not super hot out or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but no, it's a great city, but it did lose that whole like French Quarter area. It just seemed to lose like its a bit of its flair after the hurricane, which
Yeah, fair enough.
to no offense or fault of people in New Orleans, like it's massive tragedy. So
Right, yeah.
it's like you would expect that.
Let's talk about game stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
'cause
sure.
You said you were working on some of that. How much
Yeah.
can you talk about?
Not much.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a lot of NDAs. But
I guess like you could probably talk about how you got into it, right?
into game audio.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's funny. I initially was working with this big. I was working with an agency that did a lot of ads and stuff, and I wrote a business plan to like basically I was like, all right, let's move on to the next frontier here because the ad industry is shrinking and game industry, I believe even at that time, was worth more than television and film combined. And so it's like, let's just leave these two, these television and film things and go into game because it's a massive industry. And so this is really funny because this is like 2010, I think, when I did this. I wrote a giant business plan to move down to Atlanta, Georgia, and work with, and I used a specific game company in my business plan that was just hypothetical. It was just this mid-level game company that doesn't have their own studio yet. And it was like, and we would try and go after a company like this to be our client, or to be this is an example. And then we would buy a big house in the suburbs of Atlanta because it's the most traveled, it's the biggest airport in the world. So it's cheap to fly in and out. And basically what we'll have is this sort of retreat where the composers and sound designers will work down there. And then when we have the game director or producer or creative director or whatever, they could come in and, once every couple of weeks, stay, swim in the pool, enjoy a weekend out here, and then go back to wherever they're from. And that way we could keep costs down. We don't have to pay like LA prices because that's where all the composers were at the time.
Yeah.
And they, one by one, I went to, I like don't want to use specifics because I don't want to like publicly trash this agency, but I went to the city where this agency was and like didn't even want to do it in their office, like got a boardroom in a hotel and rented it out to like show them this whole presentation. And one by one, every employee like canceled that morning.
Oh, fuck.
And I was just like, wow, all right. And I just felt absolutely shitty. And weirdly enough, I sort of just threw it away. I was just like, all right, well, maybe someday I'll get in the industry. So I just sort of randomly picked a place to move, and it ended up being like the suburbs of Atlanta. And then out of nowhere, that same game company contacts me asking me to like work with them. And so I ended up doing the exact plan almost, but just without even trying. Like it just naturally fell in my lap. And so, yeah, at the end of that, I was just like, wow, they would have made a massive client and they would have entered this industry, but they didn't show up that morning. So,
damn.
Dicks. But
yeah. So, I guess I don't know how much you want to talk about the stuff that you do in game audio or not.
Yeah, so physical modeling is kind of where I feel like when I started doing it was a bit of like there's only one or two companies doing it, and now I feel like it's just way more popular. But yeah, instead of using a million wave files to try and create sounds that are in games, it's actually more I guess efficient on resources to make them from scratch if they're not terribly complicated, if it's not something like a human voice where an ear recognizes it in a very specific way. But
have you seen that thing called Lyrebird?
Yeah.
Online, you just say like 50 sentences into it that it gives you, and then it can reproduce your voice.
Yeah, and there's I forgot what it's called. There's one on GitHub too, where you could actually do it yourself. And I made on Twitter for a couple weeks, like once a week, I would just like have me saying a sentence, and it just as it was like that. This little computer down here actually is like my deep learning station. If you could see how massive it goes all the way back to it has a bunch of GPUs in there.
Oh wow, okay, and that's currently learning right now.
Not at the moment, no, but that is that is where all that happens.
It's a giant computer for people listening. It's about the size of a treasure chest or something.
Yeah, probably like one of those old antique chests that your grandma has. Yeah, but that's just like loaded with like cooling and GPUs and stuff. And so,
crazy.
Yeah, I got really into deep learning for a while, but I still am. I mean, it's like really
you're like a fan of generative music too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Me too. So like, what's your theory or just thoughts on computers being able to write music as adequately as a human? Because I have so many friends who just do not even think it's possible at all, and they think that like every time they write a song, there's like an infinite amount of decisions they had to make to get to the end of it, and that there's no way in hell a computer could make those same decisions. Whereas to me, I'm like, honestly, the amount of files on your computer that are related to your audio production process, so let's say like even the amount of files on Splice, or the amount of plugins that exist, or the amount of DAWs that exist, or the amount of musical notes that exist, are all such finite numbers. And then the amount of like the actual things that we like in those systems is even a much smaller amount of numbers. So it's like, for instance, you have like let's say 10,000 kick samples on your computer. It's like that's a super finite number to a computer to begin with. But then secondly, you probably only like maybe 1% of them.
Yeah.
Like you would only use 1% of them in a song, and the other 99% that you don't want to delete because you have issues with deletion, attachment issues or whatever. You probably wouldn't use them anyway. So it's like really, if you could build a system on your computer that just sat there and just like kind of learnt about your decisions and built a profile about you if you just had it running in the background for a series of months.
I've done this.
Really?
Yeah, the track's decent too. It's not bad. It's not a terrible track. If I released it, people would probably think, oh, this is probably one of my least favorite tracks on the album because it's a little sparse or it's just a little odd. But it does sound like me a little bit. It has this sort of sad, sort of like a lot of my music sounds sort of dissonant in a way, or sort of sad. And
it also sounds, I would say like your stuff sounds sad and dissonant, but it also sounds like classy. I would say.
It's the major seventh chords, major seventh and major ninth. It just
puts the bow ties on.
Yeah, puts the bow ties on your chords.
So how did you develop something that was just running in the background of your computer building a profile?
Yeah, so it used deep learning. It was one of the first things I did with deep learning, and the biggest pain for it was going back through so many sessions and turning melodies into MIDI, essentially. And then I did all of the work in terms of like giving it sounds. I did that on my own. And
wouldn't you have also written a program to just look through all your FL files and extract the MIDI that way? Probably,
but I think I probably would have been able to do that if FL was open source or something. So
I don't know if it's the same with FL, but with Ableton, the ALS file, if you turn it into a GNU zip and then you unzip it, it's just a big XML file.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think FL is the same. Although FL does have like you could save as a zip, and it has all of the samples and stuff in there as well. And, yeah, I'm trying to think if that's possible. Well, regardless,
You just need, So at least with Ableton, I think you could have something just go through, scan your whole drive for ALSs, convert them all to GNUs, unzip them, open all the XMLs, and look at it for MIDI information.
I think so. The interesting thing with that, though, is like that's not generative music, right? That's just morphing a bunch of other tracks together to create.
It's not really learning.
Like I remember recently, it's like every year we hear something where it's like, oh, a computer is making Bach music that's new. And it's like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, it's making new Bach music. Bach's dead. How can it make new Bach music? It's just, essentially, I guess like, for lack of a better example, they're like the Beat Step Pro. I really like the random on there because you can, if you select a certain pad to be random, it'll select from other pads. And so it always sounds good if it's a chord. Like it won't just play something that, would sound off key to, the average person or something. But when we think of like generative music in general, we automatically have this contradiction we start with because people don't like things that are random. We don't like random. Like random is just white noise, right? That's what random music sounds like.
Yeah, that literally is random.
Yeah. And so it's like the amount of carving you have to go through to even have a rhythm, to even be able to tap your foot to it, you've taken 99.9% of the random out.
Right.
And so then when you get down to melody and what we think is acceptable melody and, chords and scales. And
it's like we take this entire spectrum, break it up into chunks of 12.
Yeah.
And then we only really like 7 at a time.
Yeah, right. And so it's, so I guess when the question is like, can a computer just write a track that's as good as a human's, I almost always want to say no, and I think that it will at some point. I truly believe that it will, but I think that that's scary because I think it'll be able to do a lot of other things that are way more important at the time, such as be conscious and
Well, maybe the reason why it hasn't happened yet is just because it's not like it's not important enough,
Yeah.
Like we have more important programs to build for humanity before we start dealing with music generation.
Yeah, you wonder because where have we put most of our resources when it comes to like deep learning? Like, so when you think of some of the best algorithms that we have, like Netflix's algorithm to recommend you movies is a huge one.
Like the recommendations to like sell you things that you probably need.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was some example where some 15-year-old chick was pregnant and some pregnancy kits got sent to her house by like a Walmart algorithm or something like that. And then the dad was like, hey, what the fuck? And then it turns out she was actually pregnant.
Yeah.
Neither her or her dad knew that at that time.
Yeah. And I've even seen things where I've been surprised, where I've just been like, I'll just be like thinking about gardening soon or something, or, thinking about like replanting. And then all of a sudden I have like gardening tools showing up in my Instagram. Like what?
Yeah. So I have a question. Let's say hypothetically a computer right now could generate perfect music that who's your favorite artist? Do you have a favorite?
It'd be tough. Let's just sit with Coltrane. Let's just do
All right. So let's say you had a computer that just had every sample from every Coltrane record and very similar ones, and had his exact sounds, and then it was able to generate, say, perfect Coltrane style music. Would you prefer to listen to the stuff that was made by humans, or would you see more value in it if it was made by humans versus made by a computer?
I think it's funny if like whatever the fastest computer in the world is now, but let's just say I think Deep Blue is like the last popular one. Mm-hmm. If Deep Blue made it and they'd only made one, I'd probably value it a whole bunch. If my computer was chunking one out every single day, then it would almost be like when people pirate software or pirate music, and you could just have everything for free, and so you don't value anything anymore. Whereas you if you spend $700 on a piece of software, you're going to learn every single thing about it. It kind of reminds me of like, it goes back to like, the reason I like Autiker so much is because I spent money on their music when I was, 18 years old, 19 years old.
And isn't Autiker quite generative?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
A lot of their stuff is just max patches, right?
Yeah. And their music is probably unlistenable to 99 out of 100 people.
So actually, it's funny. I did find their music pretty unlistenable until I saw the Grant's Graph film clip and the Plyphon film clip. And then I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I can see how this isn't noise.
Yeah.
It's actually a rhythm that makes sense.
And it's interesting because there's like me, Richard Devine, Kettle, Reimer, like we're all people who just love Autechre's stuff forever. Like everything they put out, we just fall in love with it.
Yeah, Autechre is insane for sure.
And it's so funny though, because I completely understand why most people are just like, turn this off, please. Like, what the fuck am I hearing?
It borders on noise for sure. Like it's very noisy.
I think a lot of it for me is, and probably Richard and Kettle as well, is like, I don't know how most of it's being made. I don't really understand what's happening. And I think that's sort of part of it too, is like most music you hear, you could kind of put together what's happening in the studio or what's happening on the computer or whatever.
Yeah.
And with Autechre, you're like, oh, I have no idea what's happening here.
Yeah, I think the reason why that hasn't been cracked is because there's not a lot of reward for cracking it.
Yeah.
Kind of like when Skrillex came out, he got so fucking big so fast that everybody I think saw it as like a cat, like it's like a treasure hunt almost. Everyone's like, how do we make the Skrillex bass?
Right.
And then everyone was like trying to figure it out on YouTube, and then obviously you get the 100th monkey thing where everybody kind of cracks it at once.
Yeah.
And then it's like hits critical mass and everybody starts sounding like him. And I think if there was like that much reward for doing it for somebody like Autechre, it would have been cracked a long time ago.
It's kind of an interesting. Like there's this voice in my head that always tells myself if I hear something, a piece of music like Autechre or anything really, and if I think to myself, like I can never think to myself, I will make it if this sounds good and if this sold and if this did good, then I'm okay, because I feel like I may have made something that sounded better. I might be trying harder, whether it be like Autechre or some like shit band that I don't even like. I feel like a lot of musicians do that, and that sort of like reminds me of that Skrillex thing where they're like, if we could sound like him, then we've made it.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
well, no, that's anybody who could plug a guitar into an amp, but like Jimi Hendrix was the first person to like do it with distortion, and that's why he got the accolades he got. Now you're just a dude who works at Guitar Center or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's like a huge voice in the top of my head is like, don't ever use somebody else's accolades as like a
milestone.
Yeah, as a motivator or even a milestone. Like, I did it this well, I can release it. Like, it always has to be your own and from your own place.
Yeah, I think so. But I also sometimes will hear something that I like so much that I'll be like, I don't even give a fuck if I destroy the magic by figuring out exactly how this is done and trying to replicate it as like a learning tool almost.
That's totally okay. I think what I mean is like, if you did that, and then you're like, okay, now I can release this because it sounds as good as the other thing. Whereas like the other thing had its own time and place, and that is over with, and you have your own thing for somebody else to feel that way about.
Going back to like whether or not you'd feel like a piece of music made by a computer had more or less value, I actually don't know where I stand on that. I think like if you showed it to me and I couldn't tell, and then you told me like 10 minutes later after I'd been listening to it and enjoying it that it was all made by a computer, I honestly think I'd probably just be like, this is fine.
I did this 3-part series on generative music on my YouTube channel, and in one of them, I was studying Sony. Have you ever heard that Daddy's Car song that Sony made using generative neural networks or whatever? So it's this completely shitty song. And I remember reading about it in the press when it first came. It was like 2 years ago it came out. And they're like, it sounds like the Beatles. It's like, sounds like a new Beatles song that computers made, and it's 100% computer generated, and everybody was listening to it, and it was kind of like popular in social media. And of course, like with me being like into computer music, like every one of my friends is like, you got to check out this link that you surely have seen a month ago anyway. But so I was just like lambasted constantly with this one track. And so when I did this video, I actually researched it, and I reached out to Sony and I asked them what they used to make it, and they didn't respond, and I couldn't get any information from anyone. And it turns out that it's not really, Sony isn't transparent about what was generative about it. And it turns out that like the voice, which sounded odd, sounded a little off. It's just a French guy, but like it's a real person singing. It's all real instruments performing. None of it is like, none of what you're hearing is generative except maybe the melody. So I'm like, okay, the
Yeah.
lyrics are crazy. Like if you read the lyrics, they just sound like a spam message or something. It's completely nutty. Turns out the lyrics were written as well by this guy. And so
Right.
what is generative about this track? I don't know, but it made me realize that the magic was the marketing boost that Sony got for just saying the word neural network and, every wired doing
like
a thing.
clickbait or something.
Right. That's what it turned into. And
So I had a friend at RMIT in Melbourne, which is like a university in Melbourne, who wanted to develop like a 60 iPad setup where you would just put iPads in front of everybody in an orchestra,
Yeah.
and it would just generate sheet music.
Okay.
You would still have the orchestra playing it. It's just that it would be generated by, like, the sheet music would be generated.
Yeah.
But it got shot down because they were like, no, you can't like replace the conductor or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there is a bit of that. I remember a bit of that happening some years back with contact libraries and stuff,
Yeah.
where like you would have.
They're like, no, we can't replace violins. No making a violin library
Yeah.
for contact.
Right. Yeah. And always a bit silly.
I think people always have this binary style of thinking though, where they're like, oh, if that exists, then the other thing is just gone, like, and it's like, no, not necessarily. I mean, it will just change the nature of both things.
Well, people fear change so much,
Yeah.
and they automatically kind of resist any new idea. And even when one thing I think is ridiculous is with the fake app stuff, like that. Like I feel like it's just people are so over the top about how that's going to change the way that we see news and everything. It's like, no, it's not.
Well, it's like the deep fakes.
Oh yeah, deep fakes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Fake, I think Fake App is one of the apps that uses. But
Yeah, those things are hilarious. Well, it's like, by inventing a car, it's not like we stopped walking or running.
yeah,
It's like people will still do that, but it changes the nature of it, and it changes what is possible to do. Like, without a car, you couldn't go from here to however far you wanted to go, like a couple of 100 miles in a day,
yeah.
Whereas like now you'll still walk to go to the store if you feel like it and all that stuff, but it's like, no, it just opens up more opportunities. And
It kind of reminds. We have this sort of obsession where we think about like anything humans do is just bad. Like any additional human progress is bad. Like no matter what, and it's going to be bad for the environment. It's going to be bad for animals. And it's going to be bad. Like I'm big fan of animals, big fan of the environment. I do tons of outdoor stuff. I love it, but like we evolved with it. Like everything we see around us, we've evolved with that. Like it evolved alongside us.
yeah, it's just kind of like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, we
between
didn't
the
just like
planet and us.
drop in from space,
Yeah.
at least not in the last 100,000 years.
Right.
And
Unless you, I'm sure some theories believe that, like last Thursdayism or some shit.
what is that? No, I never heard that.
Where like you can't prove that anything existed before last Thursday.
Okay. Yeah. That's that's a bit the simulacra. Have you heard much about? Well, it's not like a news. It's kind of from the 90s. I think the simulacra simulation book was written.
Is that like the Elon Musk simulation theory where?
No, it's so. Yeah, I'm a big fan of simulation theory.
It kind of makes sense. It's like, yeah, so for people who don't know about it, and
Yeah.
like, let me see if I'm understanding it properly. It's that we as a species have evolved technologically so much that we're able to build like pretty insane computers to the point where we could probably in a few years with quantum computing or something develop a simulation of our entire reality within a computer because we'll have that much computing power. So the theory is that if we're able to do that almost, that probably preceding species or whatever, maybe
Yeah.
a species of ourselves, have already done that, and that if they were able to do it, they would have generated billions and billions of simulations just for fun, and therefore,
or to solve a problem. Like there's
Right.
there's a lot of reasons why you could do that, and
therefore, like the chances that we are a simulation are much higher than we are real.
yeah, and I think a better way or a less crazy way of saying that to a person who had just heard of it is that it's very likely that in the universe there are post-biological species, and it is more than likely, literally, statistically, it's more than likely that we are a post-biological species, and we don't realize it. Just if you're to look at the math, and if you're to look at some other problems, like what got me addicted to this, I don't know if I ever mentioned this or anything to you, but I've for a long time, I've been like doing a lot of research on a podcast about existentialism and about like it would be a short-term podcast. It'd only be like 7 episodes, but each one would be sort of a different theory. And I got hung up on simulation theory, like big time. And yeah, I've talked to people who, like, I work with like Adler Planetarium and stuff, and I've made some friends in the physics realms and stuff, and I've talked to them about this, and most of them are like, yeah, it's more than likely that's the case, but we still have to figure out like how that simulation works, or we have to figure out if it's not, or we have to keep being scientists.
Right, or if it even like matters or changes the nature of our experience and stuff like that.
Yeah, the overall it's like one of those, whenever talking about it in any public way whatsoever, I almost always want to say like the pain you feel is still real. The pain, like, don't think that you can like go out and kill a bunch of people and like, because you're still going to be creating real pain, and you're going to feel the consequences of, like, everything still feels as real as it does whether or not we're a post-biological species. But some of the more interesting things about it is like it solves the Fermi paradox. Like, why have we not had any contact with alien life? If we can see very far into space, why have we not seen any evidence of alien life? We don't have anything except for the occasional UFO thing that you'll see on YouTube that gets debunked. But
it's just because like generating other whole species would just be a waste of computing power.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. We have Planck scale, which is the smallest measurable scale that we actually have a resolution. Like, there is no infinite small. It goes down to Planck scale, and that's it.
And you think one of the arguments is that if this was actual real life, then it would just be infinitely. Yeah,
everything could get infinitely smaller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The one that
maybe it does though, and we just can't measure it.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, Planck. If you read up, I don't want to like get into that totally, but like if you read up on like Planck scale, like why we can't get smaller, it's kind of like, well, that's an arbitrary rule. Why does that exist? And another arbitrary rule that a lot of people just sort of don't think about is relativity. Why is there a speed limit on reality? Like, reality's clocked at the speed of light. Like, time is clocked at the speed of light.
Which means, like, if you go faster, shit starts bending and getting weird.
And it just doesn't work anymore. You can't actually go faster. And so it's like, well, then why? Well, why would we not be able to infinitely go fast? Why can we only go that? Why is there a speed limit on reality?
So this is kind of like leaning towards like perhaps all of these like limitations are just to save power, like computing power.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about that, but yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And when you could even get silly with it and be like, okay, so like dark matter, like that's just unused clusters for future file storage. You could, we have a lot of like
next level.
A lot of weird things when you think about physics, astrophysics, where it would make more sense if it was only rendered when we were looking at that particular part of space.
But isn't that the case? Like, it's there's some sort of I don't know what it's called, but like when you look at something, it changes the nature of it and stuff like that.
The double slit experiment. Are
exactly.
You talking about? Yeah. So when we were trying to figure out how particles behave, we were trying to figure out if like subatomic particles behaved as just light or as waves. Mm-hmm. And so are you familiar with the double slit?
Yeah. I can't exactly remember the experiment. I know they shine light through two slits, and then they saw the photons hitting the wall behind it or something like that, and then by observing it, it like changed one of them.
Yeah, so it behaved the way that they expected, but then, it didn't. But like when they looked at the results, it behaved as waves rather than the way they expected it to behave. But then when they observed it, it behaved as the way they expected it to, and so it basically, observing it changed it. And there's like two ways that I feel like scientists are kind of cut in half over this. Like, half of them are like, okay, well, when you observe something, there's photons coming out of your eye. Mm-hmm. Like there's so of course it's going to change the way that something behaves. But I'm not really on board with that, because I don't really understand why it would change the way something behaves. That, like, what are the odds that it would change the way it behaves that dramatically? Like, it might change where some of the particles ended up. I don't understand how it would, like, one would make it act as a wave and one would make it act as a light, and the way that we would expect light to reflect. So I guess circling back to simulation theory, or simulation argument, is why would we it would perfectly make sense that things behave differently when we're not observing it, because it would be more efficient. And so things in
so you're saying the double slit experiment is like another +1 for simulation theory.
Yeah, like it could be, right? But you can also look at a lot of like things that we don't understand. It's important to like admit that you could look at a lot of things that we don't understand and apply them to Judaism.
Yeah,
or apply
yeah.
them to religion.
So
or
this
something,
is
you know?
this is called apophenia, right? Like where
Yeah.
you just take unrelated stuff and apply it to other stuff.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you look at the mysteries that we have in science, especially with quantum physics and especially with astrophysics, and look at them through the eyeglasses of simulation theory, things do line up. It does answer a lot of questions
Yeah.
abstractly.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. It definitely seems like there's a lot of convenient answers there.
Right, yeah. And this is not that much seems like it's stretching as much as religion does. You know, religion
Totally.
seems to stretch a bit more to find answers to these questions.
Yeah, I would say that makes sense. Speaking of like apophenia, I wrote an album called Apophenia, and the whole basis about it was like my friend asked me to write a concept album,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't really know how you would specifically like, you know, line things up in your music to actual feelings that we have in real life. So I was just like, I'm just going to call it apophenia, and then people will make their own connections and
Right.
like do their own shit with it. So I'm curious how you attack that problem of like trying to impart like certain emotions or certain like vibes or certain messages into tunes without using lyrics.
Yeah.
Because obviously with lyrics it's super tangible. You can just say this is this and I feel this way.
I got dumped and my grandma died. And
Exactly. But with music,
Yeah.
when you're like relying completely on sound design, I mean, I suppose you could use the sound of rain to mean rain or something.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, how do you usually deal with that?
I think I've had a lot of people message me. But I mean, I feel like any artist who's like released music long enough, they have people messaging them saying, you know, oh, your music got me through a really rough time, or I was, you know, going through this. And I've had a couple that were as serious as like, you know, I was suicidal and your music got me through this time and stuff. And then they would cite a specific song. And then I would think to myself, like, that would be the last fucking thing I would ever have a suicidal person listen to, because they got the opposite message that I was giving. Like I was giving a very hopeless message and they got a message of hope out of it, or vice versa. And I feel like some are like obviously sad or obviously not sad, but most of the time I completely submit to the fact that people are going to, you know, interpret things in their own way. And that's okay. And that's fine, because it's more meaningful to them that way. Like nobody cares about my ups and downs in my personal life. They care about their own. And so if my music is a tool for that, then that's actually like one of the few valuable things to me about releasing music, is that it actually inspires people, or music in general actually inspires people or helps them through hard times. And when I get messages like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I do this, other than just to be able to afford to write music continually for the rest of my life. Like that is a good thing that comes from it. So I completely submit to it. I don't try to be literal in any way.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't try to either, because I pretty much understand that like no matter what message I try to give in my music, somebody's going to misinterpret it anyway. At
Yeah,
some
and
point.
if it's interpreted, even if it's interpreted 90% of the way, that's almost worse than them having their own perception of it, right? Is because like they're being off by 10% about something that's like emotionally impactful to you is terrible. You know, terrible to think about. Like, oh, they might. Yeah, I guess it.
Depending on how personal the message is to you that you're trying to give as well.
Because that 10% is like,
yeah, it could like make or break the entire message sort of thing.
Yeah,
Which
right.
In that case, kind of makes it more like 50%.
Yeah, right.
I always think about music that like, so I'm really good at finishing like 90% of a track in like 4 hours or something. But then like that last 10% seems to take me like months to like decide on. And in which case I start to look at it more as like 50 or 60% of the process.
Yeah.
Which is mostly just like 50 or 60% of my music writing process is just me being comfortable with the song.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting way of looking at it. Like the entire album of Arboreal is kind of about like the album itself is about writing the album and finishing the album. It's
Interesting.
Sort of
Meta.
Well, it was like it was this sort of like my first like heavily recognized album, or at least album that like made it into like the media and spaces and actually like got, you know, put my name anywhere, was Soundtrack to a Vacant Life. And then my follow up to that was like this, all of a sudden I had all this pressure to like release this new album that would somehow be better and more impactful than the one that had been successful. And at the same time, I had all these like pitfalls in my life. Like I was just like drinking a lot, and I wasn't like using any hard drugs or anything, but I was definitely not being healthy. A good friend of mine, a good musician, a musician who I worked with a lot, committed suicide. I lost some family members. Like I was just, it was really, really hard to like stay on track. And I realized at one point that like all I was trying to do was make an album that was more impactful than the last one. And that was like the story of my life at the time. So it was like, that was my life at that point, was the album. So I have to make an album about making an album in a weird way. And that's sort of what it is. It's about like the failure of being able to put that together. And in its own way, it's sort of...
But then I feel like now if you Google the Flashbulb in YouTube or something, Undiscovered Colors, at least for me, is the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, that's probably the most popular track, which is
fucking, it's a sick track. I really like it.
Well, I mean, it's funny that it would turn out that way, right? That it would turn out to be this, like... Yeah, like that's sort of almost like me taking a piss at myself in album form turns out to be the most iconic one.
Well, that's maybe what like fun music is for you, right? Is like writing it about a thing about you writing it or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Even though that's a really emotional track too, I think. But I don't honestly, like, there's so much of that, like, let's go to the club and get drunk, like banger sort of stuff, that there needs to be that like other side of it and that balance. And I think people really appreciate when artists do that stuff. I find when I write like really emotional music, generally online it'll do way better, but obviously like at shows it doesn't really do well.
Right. Yeah, that's a big issue with me, and that's like there's nothing worse than like trying to like play something really impactful and like soft at a festival, and then you just hear like from the other stage or something.
Yeah.
I've sort of like talked to I understand like the desperation of doing, because I'm not famous enough to really like make demands like this or anything.
Well, I think you have like a little cult following though. Like,
yeah,
I definitely think in cities you have like a few hundred people that will come out to like every show for the next 20 years if you do it.
Well, there's like one thing I keep telling my agent is that I really hope that I get to a point where I can only play seated venues. Like to where I can be quiet. I don't care if there's only 20 people in the venue.
Right.
Like, but if I can be quiet, I can play for 4 hours and be happy if I could like hit low notes and high notes and do all that. But it's just at venue shows like where you played last night, you just like you were just saying, you just have to be loud the entire time. You have to like keep the energy up.
I mean, you have to be at least louder than the crowd.
Yeah, right.
Because
everybody, and in a seated venue, it's just rude.
Yeah,
to
you
talk.
need to be quiet.
And it's like, and it's weird to say, because I don't really mind people talking at my shows. It's like, go ahead, you're here to see your friends. Like, I get it, but I feel like if I could just force them to give me like 10 minutes of their attention, I might be able to like pull something off that, could keep it for the rest of the show.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the interesting points you made in your vinyl video is you're like, one of the things that I think is good about vinyl is the fact that it makes people like pay more attention to the music, which I think is good. So it's kind of like in some way you just need to figure out what the vinyl is for a live show for people to maybe just charge $600 a ticket.
Yeah, and that's sort of like, so especially with show seat, and too, like that's always been something I've pushed back against, is like tickets that cost more than $20, and like, and I've always just, because then I get so mad thinking of like, whenever I've gotten like a message on Twitter or something from somebody who's like, oh, I wanted to see you perform for years but I couldn't afford it, I want to like shoot myself. I'm just like, I can't believe that I'm like, I don't know, I just get so sad. Like I hate that like somebody's economic situation could prevent them from experiencing art in some way.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of why when I first started releasing music, I did it all for free, because I was like, I don't want money to get in the way of people enjoying my music. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it's so hard because we obviously have to like pay our bills, but
yeah. So the girl I was telling you about that I just started dating, she's a programmer, and so just by proxy of dating her, I've been talking about programming a lot. And one of the things I've noticed is that like in the programming scene is like anyone who makes anything, they'll pretty much just always put it up for free on GitHub.
Yeah.
And there's a few reasons for it. One is that they want other people to grab that thing and like build on it and like improve it. And I think another one is that nobody wants to do like software updates and like maintenance.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, do I want to like monetize this thing and open up this pit of work for myself for the next few years?
Right.
And then also like giving this stuff out for people to make other stuff work. And I think as a whole, like the programming scene and the tech scene has built so fucking quickly and so rampantly.
Yeah, that's, how do you, so I guess like being around someone who's into code more, do you think that's going to change the way you make music? Do you think it's going to...
No, I don't think so, but it's interesting, like, just seeing sort of the differences between the scenes. Like, I feel like...
Are you, like, looking at Gits more often now?
No,
Are you doing
but I mean, like, just at least, like, seeing how coders are with each other rather than,
Sure.
like, musicians and the fan base and stuff, like, in terms of money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in the end, it seems like the tech industry is just making way more money than the music industry now by like, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started with, like, free shit, and it still is primarily free shit.
The tech industry kind of has this, like a company like Google, for example. I mean, they can be as evil as any other company, but they have this, like, enlightened understanding of capitalism in a way where, like, they sort of look at they realize that you have for example, in India, you have all these people who are, stricken with poverty, and if you give them all a computer, and if you give them all an education and a way to expand on their ideas, you'll just have more. Technology will progress faster. And when technology progresses, like before we had technology at the level that we had it, like before the Industrial Revolution, even a little bit before that, like anytime you made money, somebody else got poorer. Like you just had this, like, small pie, and every single person could have their slice, and some people would have a huge slice, and that meant that other people would starve to death. And technology just makes the pie bigger. Right. Like that's the way that, like, most economists look at it. And, like, Google and Facebook and all these tech companies, they absolutely have an understanding of that, where it's like, we need to make that pie bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we'll all be more comfortable.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, that's how I feel about, like, free tutorials on YouTube. Like, if I put information out there, or this is how I felt about it, I still feel this way about it.
Yeah.
I've always felt this way about it. If I put free information out there on my YouTube channel, telling other people how to make music without trying to get any money or without, like, trying to benefit in any way myself.
Yeah.
In some way, like, in the long run, that does benefit me. It's like planting seeds, and then, like, all of these producers get better, and then the entire electronic music industry grows.
Yeah.
Because there's more people making the music, so more of their friends are getting into it, and then it kind of hits a snowballing effect, and then, now electronic music is, like, the thing.
Yeah.
Almost.
It's funny to me, and it's funny to me how it sort of mixes together. I've played a couple shows now where actually one was funded by Google. It was in Mountain View, California. And I played a show, and there's a couple people who showed up early while I was still sound checking, and they, like, wanted to talk, and I said hi to them. And I think there's 3 people, and 2 of them had never heard the Flashbulb before. They had only watched my YouTube channel. Right. And I was just like, what? Like, I have people coming from this. Yeah, and that was kind of bizarre, and it's bizarre on my channel. Like, I swear every video I release, they're like, I just realized you're the Flashbulb. And it's like, you didn't figure that out yet? Like, that's what... But...
I wonder, like, if that'll happen with this podcast, if I just, like, play a 600-person venue and 400 of them are podcast fans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'll just...
I feel like that's kind of what happened to the comedy scene, right? Like, you have people like Joe Rogan and Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer and all of that stuff starting these podcasts a few years ago, and now they're selling out, like, these giant auditoriums.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the people going into, say, like, a show like Tom Segura are wearing your mum's house podcast shirts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Joe Rogan one's especially interesting because...
That's, like, the biggest thing on the planet at the moment.
It's, like, the biggest thing on the planet, and it's, like, very political. Like, it's so...
A lot of the guests are, yeah.
It's so... Yeah, like, I used to be a huge fan because I've been into boxing and MMA my whole life, and so I've always been a fan. And at some point, like, on Jordan Peterson's 17th appearance on the fucking show, I was just like, this is like kind of crappy. I don't really like this thing. Like, this is just every single episode is about how liberal college kids are crazy and the world's ending.
It got like that for a while. I'll still watch it if there's, like, a good amount. Like, if there's a good guest, like someone who's super techie, or Elon Musk. I watched that one. The Edward Snowden one recently I watched.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that one. I haven't watched it in a bit, but I usually would watch it. Like, I usually would tune back in if, like, an MMA fighter or a coach but it's, like, less and less he's doing.
Well, now he has the MMA show too.
Yeah, but in that, is that just the one where he calls fights that he's not paid to call?
Pretty much. I mean, he has, like, MMA people on there, but yeah, pretty much they just watch YouTube clips of other MMA fights and go, like, hey, like, just talk about it.
That's
what belt are you in? You do BJJ?
Yeah, purple.
Purple belt. Okay.
But
and how long have you been doing it?
Oh God, since '99, I think.
Oh wow!
And so I should be, like, if I were actually, if I actually stayed with it the way that most people do, I would be many black belts in by now. But
Well, what's the process to like belt up?
usually about, for the average person, about 2 years probably.
Per belt?
Yeah, probably 3 to blue, and then after that, probably 2 to 3 years per belt. It's a lot slower than like karate or something.
And like
that.
what's the process though to get up another belt? Like, what do you have to do? Do you have to go do a fight or something? Or?
No, it depends on your coach. My fiance is she's like a white belt, and she has like all her stripes, and she's so close to blue belt, and she was like any day she was going to get, she had done some tournaments and stuff, and any day she was going to go to blue belt. And now she like just moved here and moved to a new school, and so in America, she's English, and so I went with her the last time she went to the class, and I don't really know if they're going to be like, you're a blue belt already, and if they're just going to like order one, or if maybe she's, but it depends on the
So
school.
if you're like training at a school and there's like, say, a lot of blue belts, and you're a white belt, and you're just like rolling with all the blue belts and winning a lot, or just like it's clear that you're like at a higher skill level, they'll just upgrade you. Yeah,
and I would say like 90% at least with most classes are white belts.
Okay.
Like, and then there's, and me, for example, I started like fighting, and so doing, or I guess like MMA, and so doing rolling with the gi on just became less beneficial, and so I had to learn more wrestling and judo and things like that. And so at purple belt, I just sort of fell out of like the normal jiu-jitsu regimen, and I went into like more grappling, like wrestling, and I guess more active grappling, or almost more aggressive grappling, things that you can't do. Like I couldn't practice that 3 days a week. Otherwise I'd have torn ACLs. Like you can't keep doing it. But now so I'm a purple belt, but if I put on my gi right now and went upstairs and rolled with my fiance, she would probably choke me out just because I don't remember how to defend against collar chokes and stuff like that.
Right.
And so it's pretty funky that way. Like she would never get me on the ground. Like she'd never be able to take me down because I have the balance down from not wearing a gi. Mm-hmm. But she would probably choke me out just using her collar or my collar, or her, the right off the wrist.
True. Okay. Yeah, because I guess you can use the piece of clothing as an article to choke with.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I've been choked in ways just it drives me crazy now because I'm so not used to it anymore. I'm so used to just wearing, essentially a spandex suit and grappling that way. But
yeah, I've thought about doing BJJ a few times, but I'm always like, do I really want to break a hip or a knee? Or
you won't. No. If you go into it, and if you go into it with a gi, I mean, the chances, like the most frequent thing that people break, and it's not even frequent, is their toes, or pinky toe or something, because sometimes it gets caught in the mat or something like that. But that's not like a weekly occurrence. It's like every now and then it'll happen to someone. Wearing a gi, honestly, I think in gi rolling, the worst injury I had was like a slightly bloody nose.
Interesting. So why is the gi so much safer?
Because I guess if we were to just like, no gi grappling is typically done, you stand up and you're both standing, and then you just start, and one person has to initiate a takedown and defend a takedown. You're just using strength. And like a lot of takedowns that like I've learned, for example, I have to lift somebody up on my shoulder and then like fall backwards on them and stuff. And so there's so much strength going on. That's what hurts your knees and your neck and your back. And with grappling, with just jiu-jitsu, with gi grappling, you typically start on your knees. And the way that most people all the way up to purple belt want to initiate, rather than like taking a leg and going down, they'll just pull guard. They'll pull the person on top of them and then put their legs around that person and then start from there. So you have like a lot of drilling and you have a lot of rolling. And most of it's easy to just stay light and not use strength, but use technique. Because if I were to roll with like a black belt, for example, I could roll with a black belt who weighs half of what I weigh and probably still get submitted, just because their technique would be just, miles beyond where mine is, and my strength means nothing. They're using my strength against me. And so I almost don't even recommend it as a form of self-defense training, because I feel like the best self-defense training you could have is learning how to run and keep running. Like run some marathons and you'll be able to get out of trouble. But I mean, I recommend jiu-jitsu for almost anybody. I think it's especially for people who don't like going to the gym and just running on a treadmill, for people who need goals. And I don't know. I would imagine you're probably closer to that demographic just because you've seen
Yeah.
very goal driven in life. So
Yeah, I don't like going to the gym by myself. Like
Yeah.
usually if I work out, it's with like a boot camp class in a park or it's at a CrossFit class in a gym or something like that. But yeah, I got out of the going to the gym thing by myself like four years ago or something like that. And I've just done classes since
yeah,
because I find that like I don't push myself hard enough if I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And I kind of like somebody just being like, do this, like rather than me having to come up with my own workout plans and all that sort of
right.
shit.
And so it's kind of like, so I guess like imagine that like you have all these opponents or you have all these other people in your class, and like when you start, they're all better than you because they've been to class and you haven't, and everybody started where you started, so there isn't really. It's kind of a filter for douchebaggery because, you have this, like, everybody's been in your shoes already.
Yeah, like
And-
I've heard that before, like people who do BJJ, they're not like super egotistical or anything.
No. It's very, and I mean, if you are in a school where you have that, then it's probably not a good school to be in, but,
Right.
yeah, and you have that, but also you have this, like, you might get submitted a couple times and then you have to like go back and be like, all right, well, and you'll ask your training partner even, well, how do I prevent that? And they, they'll tell you. That's usually the kind of community that you're in. And then you learn how to overcome it. And then the next time, the next partner, your next training partner, the next person you're rolling with puts you in that submission, you know how to get out of it, you know how to reverse it. And that's kind of what life is, it's kind of like
Right.
a little microcosm for life. Is like you just run into challenges, you learn how to overcome them, you feel better about yourself, you move on to the next
Avoid them
challenge.
next time, and
Yeah, and you can, and then the next time you get a challenge, you can either have confidence or a lot of people just look at it and say, I could never do that, and then quit. That's terrible.
Yeah. You ever done climbing, like bouldering?
No, not in a gym setting. I've done a little bit in mountains.
Right. Okay.
But but it is something that interests me. I see Edit's Instagram. I know
Yeah,
he does a lot.
yeah. Yeah, I've been climbing a few times recently too. I'm terrible at it, mostly because I'm so heavy. So it's like just doing any of that shit is fucking impossible.
Yeah. Try jujitsu. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I might give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's most schools will give you like, at the very least, a couple free classes. A lot of times they'll give you a month or two for free.
Nice.
So yeah,
Awesome, because they know you'll just probably get addicted and then.
yeah. I mean, it's, and they want people who want to be there too. Like they don't want to. No school wants somebody showing up who doesn't want to be there just because they paid a month in advance or something.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I always felt like one of my last gi classes, I was rolling around with like a 65-year-old guy. Like there's really not anybody who's, unless you're, physically disabled, like there's no reason why anybody couldn't do it. Like my parents could easily do it. And I like my fiance, she's incredible at it. She's like so determined with it. And she gets so hyped up about it. And she's like, and she knows a lot more than the average white belt. Like mentally, she's pretty much past where I am as a purple belt. Like she knows. So I don't know.
Cool. There's only one more thing I want to talk about before wrapping it because it's like
Are we at Joe Rogan hours at
we're
this
at
point?
100 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Which is like an hour and 40, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to make them like an hour to an hour and a half, roughly. I wanted to talk about your fear of flying.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a thing. Or at least like I know that you drive everywhere to tour, you don't fly.
Right.
Which makes like doing like sort of back and forth between the coast stuff a little bit not logistically friendly.
Yeah.
So is it like, I guess this kind of comes out of the BJJ stuff because I know a lot of people get into exercise and like, for instance, I got into exercise specifically to attack anxiety and depression because I was just like, crazy spot and I was like, fuck, I need to change my diet and exercise because I was just depressed and anxious all the time.
Right.
And I know a lot of people get into BJJ for that and you do BJJ a lot and you don't seem like a very anxious person. So I was like curious about the flying thing.
Yeah. I dealt with, I guess I dealt with a lot of anxiety throughout my entire life. I still do to some extent. Now it's a little different than it used to be. It used to be very like panic disordery and I don't know, I figure I was prescribed things for it and actually sort of sorted it out on my own. I just tried to have a panic attack whenever I felt one coming on. I'd be like, all right, let's get it over with. And the moment I did that, I never had another one. Like it was just
Interesting. Okay.
But, now my anxiety is more like just not sleeping because I'm worried about something or, because I'm like, I have an idea and I'm not sure how to implement it or something. But
more circumstantial than
right, yeah.
existential.
Yeah. But starting your day out with grappling with something like that, starting your day out with like a massive physical challenge that most people are scared of, or to push your body and mind
like
in a way,
run up a hill or something.
Adversity, really, like starting your day with adversity like that, and then it's really hard to be like, oh, I'm really anxious in line at a Best Buy, you know, when you know you were in a choke an hour earlier.
Yeah.
So but with flying, it's strange. I was never really that scared of flying, and I had a couple bad experiences, like what would probably be described as moderate turbulence, but that's enough to where like people on board are screaming and stuff. And
Wait, so you were in a plane that had moderate turbulence, and everyone on the plane was screaming?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And because I used to fly a lot, like to gigs
multiple times.
I had been in the last really bad one that happened was on the way from Florida to Chicago, and there was like a tropical storm. We weren't like going through a tropical storm, but there was one nearby, like within a couple hundred miles, and so the winds were a little crazy, and we basically like went through those winds, and you know they told us to buckle up previously, and I'm used to that, and it was just, it felt like we were falling 500 feet at a time, you know, just like, and you could feel the plane like hitting this fake pocket, not fake, but you could feel it hitting this pocket of air that felt like we were like landing on bricks or something, you know, it was like crazy. And I'm like, everything was like strewn around the cabin and stuff, but everybody was fine. Nobody got injured. Nobody like even hit their head on anything. Like it was completely fine. And I still flew after that. I just hated it. Like I flew internationally after that. I flew, all over the place, but I just hated it more and more every time. And I think because after that was like the first time I truly realized that I'm 30,000 feet into the sky, that I'm just in a metal tube 30,000 feet in the sky.
It's a scary thought, right? Like I've thought about this before where I'm flying and I'm like, literally the earth is so strong that it could just like knock us out of the sky with no problems right now if it wanted to.
But oddly, I'm not scared of crashing or dying or any of those things. I'm just don't like being up that high and not being able to get down. Like it's the weirdest, and it's just like this thing that happened inside me. But I'm not against flying. Like I still, like most of the reason. So what happened with this is I had an aversion to flying. And so I was like, I'll drive to this gig. And I started driving more and more. And I just discovered this country in between here and LA. I discovered like everything from like the nature to like the little communities that you go through, and I just got addicted to that.
It's a different experience for sure. Yeah, I've done like 3 driving tours.
Yeah,
and I've done like countless amounts at this point of flying tours. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I want to do a driving tour again in the spring. Yeah,
I was about to say like if we do, now that we're with the same agency, if we do end up touring, like we should absolutely be driving. Like it's so I think, so much fun.
Yeah, I think the touring that I do with you, like, so I want to start doing like branded sets, I guess, like, which is something that I think Tipper started doing first, or maybe not. Maybe he wasn't the first one, but he started doing it like maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, he started branding his sets as up tempo sets and down tempo sets.
Oh, nice.
And that allowed people to kind of know what they were getting. Mm-hmm. And then quite often festivals would book him and he'd do both, you know, like Saturday night, he'd do an up tempo. Yeah,
I've seen him on,
And then, you know, Sunday morning as the sun was rising, he'd do a down tempo sunrise set, or he'll do a down tempo sunset set, like on the Saturday afternoon, and then, or something like that. So I want to start doing that. And I think, if we did a driving tour together, that'd be sick, but I'd want to do like probably a down tempo sets. Yeah. I think that'd make more sense.
Right. Yeah. And that could also fit in with the seated venue idea as well.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if we could do show seed stuff and do a few markets that way. But I'd be super interested in that. But it seems like at this point, my last EP was dubstep. My thing before that was pretty heavy, and my sets for the last like 12 to 18 months have just been fucking banger sets, pretty much like DJing. So I think at this point, people kind of expect that now. So now I need to kind of get into, I think, branding the sets differently or something.
Don't give people what they expect. Never do that. No, you never want to do that, because like what people expect, like I guess like just briefly before we wrap this, like almost every message I get is like, make another album like this one, like, you know, insert album.
Yeah, here. And you're like, why don't you just go listen to that album?
Right, like nothing would be more disappointing than if I actually did that. Than if I came through and did nothing new.
But also when people say like, oh, I miss like this, like, why don't you make more stuff like this? You're like, literally, you're explaining to me to make something that you have.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
exists. Like
Yeah,
they're
right.
like, oh, make a song that sounds like this song. It's like you literally already have the song. Like just
and it's almost like realistically, if they really like something, if it blew their mind, like what they really should be asking is, can you blow my mind again?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
can you make something else that blows my mind as much as this did, rather than
Right.
can you just make this thing again? But circling back to the flying thing, yeah, I'm not opposed to it, and I've been talking about going to, like, I mean, in 2 weeks I'm going to be getting married to a British citizen, and
Yeah, congrats.
thanks. Yeah, it's she has a son there, and so there's like shared there, like the son's father has, my stepson's father has custody, and so there's a lot of going back and forth because it's a 3-year-old on a plane, so
So you
inevitably
have to
there's going to be flying, and neither her or I can really leave the country until her citizenship is granted, but once that
Right.
happens, I'm going to be in England a lot.
What's the citizenship process, by the way? Because you're getting married, and what does she have to do to become a citizen?
She has to, the way, like we went through an attorney, and the way that she has to do it is file for an adjustment of status.
And then take a test or something, or
Yeah, they'll give us a test. The test is funny because it's basically trying to prove that we live together and that we're an actual couple, and like, that's like, there's not much to fool there. Like I could.
so if you live together and you're a couple and you just file for status change and you're married, it's just citizenship.
They ask clever questions, sort of things like, what color are the drapes in the bedroom? Like if you were faking a marriage, you would not know the answer to that.
Yeah,
But like,
interesting.
we know the answer to that because,
Yeah, you live
it's in the
together.
house, and we probably have a story behind the drapes anyway. So
Right.
yeah, but it's if you're a legitimate married couple, it's not that hard. If you're faking it,
Yeah,
it's
I should
pretty
probably do that at some point because
hard. Yeah, just
I'm
get
on-
roped.
yeah, I've been doing the visa thing, which is fun. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not fun, but it's fine. It works.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a pain in the ass every 3 years to pay the government another $5,000 to stay here for 3 more years.
yeah. Well, probably good stuff to talk about after the podcast, just because you could say things even in this podcast that would jeopardize your citizenship as a married person. So
That is true, but I don't think I would ever like illegitimately try and become a citizen here. I think I would only do it if it was under legitimate circumstances and
Yeah.
do it through like an attorney and all that stuff as well. But yeah, I guess I'm just interested in it because
Yeah.
I probably will go through the process at some point.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good spot to end it then, right?
yeah,
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you
yeah.
doing
I'm
this.
getting married. No more podcasts from me. No, I'm joking.
All right. Well, cheers. Have a good
Yeah.
one.
Thank you for listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.